Hey there, hope you're doing absolutely fantastic, and I don't know if anybody has mentioned this or not, but that fit you're rocking right now, it really brings out your gorgeous eyes, dude. Seriously, you look good as hell. Sorry, you're just so distracting. Anyhow, today we're going to be talking about 3 more games to play when you are craving that XCOM 2 vibe, but you've already logged 10,000 hours into that sexy game this week, and you kind of want to spice it up a bit. And as we all know, XCOM feels like 20 times better each time we come back to it after a little break, so you know how it is. We've got to play hard to get. This episode in particular, I wanted to shout out some smaller games that don't get talked about as much. One of these games has under 500 reviews, and it deserves more. I also want to quickly interject with a thank you. Thank you so much for the insane support this series gets, and it's what keeps me going with this channel. Seriously. For those of you who are seeing this as their first video on this channel, go check out the first 4 as well if you are interested. They have some fantastic games in them that I recommend for you. None of that is required viewing in order to watch this one, so go ahead and watch this one first. It's up to you. And if you happen to be interested in this as well, I have a vote up for our next quick review. I haven't yet started on it since I've been busy, so there's still a chance to get your vote in there. That'll be over in the community tab. Hopefully I'll see your sexy ass over there. Alright, without further ado, let's get into this. First on our list is a pretty highly requested one. The Dungeon of Njskfhgkjsh. The Dungeon of Njskfhgkjsh. The Amulet of Chaos. Oh my God, I messed up an easy word. I'm sure I said that right, although I'm not entirely certain there is a right way to say Njskfhgkjsh. I really should have looked up a fucking translation or something. We're gonna just call this game Amulet of Chaos, alright? Thank you. Amulet of Chaos is a D&D dungeon crawling parody game with gameplay reminiscent of XCOM, as most games on these lists are. It's developed by Artifact Studio and takes an incredibly comedic approach to the dungeon crawling formula, and is immediately quite striking with its strong character designs and abrasive use of tropes for many a meta joke. It is fair to mention that if you don't enjoy meta humor or just having your games injected with so many jokes it feels like you are watching a present era Marvel movie, you won't like this game. In no way does it take itself seriously, sometimes to its detriment. But with that being the vibe it sets out the gate, I knew what to expect from moment 1 going forward. That is to say that this is a delightful game to de-stress with, to relax with a warm cup of tea while listening to Boy Pablo and dicing up some baddies. It was a nice vibe. I found this game to fit into my morning slot perfectly, helping me start my day with some comedic positivity. Except for the elf lady. God damn it, her voice is like an earworm on steroids. Now, plot-wise for this game, with as few spoilers as possible, somehow it manages to tail the line of being incredibly surface level, is still interesting enough to engage you and have you thinking somewhat critically. I mean, it's not Shakespeare, that's sure as shit, but it is entertaining, and that's all this game really desires to be. You are in a dungeon, you encounter a cursed amulet, you meet new people as you traverse the dungeon, and complete different quests of ranging importance. Dungeon of Chaos also has a DLC that dropped relatively recently, and it seems to be garnering pretty positive reviews with 91% positive on Steam, but I didn't play with that, so if you want to pull the trigger on it, that's on you. I also want to quickly talk about the art design. You know how I am about art design, and if you don't, you will know. I don't know what this bit is. I'm moving on. This game is that perfect in-between of simple but not too simple. It's just quite simply, I'm saying simple a lot. It's just quite simply fun to look at. The effects are illustrious, especially for the wizard's spells, and the design of all the characters is unique to them while embracing their tropes as they should. Just a strong design overall. Or pointy in some cases. This game even crosses over into being very pretty at some points. You can see outside in some locations and it looks gorgeous. Not as gorgeous as you, obviously, but it's up there to be sure. Altogether, the game looks and feels satisfying to play, and in terms of its UI and gameplay, it does quite well for itself. I didn't find the UI to be unbearable. Everything was where I expected it to be, which is pretty much the goal of a user interface to begin with. Yeah, that's right. I did just call the UI by its full government name. What of it? Gameplay-wise, the game works well, but it is rather easy. The game even has a built-in mechanic to make failing a positive thing. Every time you fail a save, attack, ability, or what have you, you charge up a bar that can be expended to cast strong abilities. Things like giving a unit an extra attack point or something along those lines. I found this mechanic to be more fun than otherwise, but it did sometimes feel cheap when I used it to win an otherwise hard fight. But that might just be because I'm used to the punishment XCOM happily dishes out onto me. I'm traumatized. In short, Amulet of Chaos is a ridiculously fun, chill experience with comedy that hits more than it misses, for me at least. Its gameplay mechanics are sound, it's not overly ambitious, but it does what it does very well, and that's being an entertaining turn-based experience. Now let's talk about a game that you've probably never heard of, called Mortal Glory. Mortal Glory is probably the least XCOM-esque game on any of these lists, but for me it still holds a similar vibe that I found to fill that XCOM hole just enough to be familiar yet unique. Developed by Red Beat Games, a solo indie developer who is currently developing their second game, so massive kudos for that. Not easy at all, by any means. Mortal Glory is a relatively simple fantasy gladiator simulator in both gameplay and premise, but that does not make it shallow or boring. By simple, I mean that this game is easy to pick up and know what to do without having played it before. The real learning curve in this game is learning team comps and the more deep nitty-gritty of different abilities combined with RNG that will decide the fate of your champions. But what is this game, you're wondering? I'm just kind of spitting random buzzwords at you after all. Mortal Glory has you entering a combat arena where you are expected to fulfill the desires of the Demon Lord. Sometimes he will have odd requests that he wants to entertain himself with, be it killing the last enemy with magic or splattering at least 11 tiles with blood. Those kinds of normal things to ask somebody to do. You a freaky bitch, buddy. In between each match, you will find yourself spending earned cash on new items to beef up your boys, or even some new recruits. If you have a surplus of attack lads, you can always slap one of your boys into the guild hall to do some training in the meantime and really buff himself up. Slightly unrelated, but a fun detail in this game is the fact that when one of yours or another enemy unit gets felled, it says what their injury is, be it a crippling concussion or even a coma. And if one of your boys gets an injury, it will stick with them until they either heal slowly from it or chill in the guild hall for a bit. It's a simple system that adds a lot of depth to this game. Like, should I send Twinklethums III into the guild hall now and put my wimpy backlog guy in? Or should I risk his life and send him back into the gulag? Because, fun fact guys, your units can permanently die if they sustain too many injuries. I didn't know about this mechanic until it was too late. We miss you, Twinklethums. We hope you're happy up there in that farm in the sky. My God, he's dead. Oh my God. Anyways, another fun mechanic this game has is some random events in between each match as well, to really help spice it up a bit. Be it something simple like, a beggar pleads with you for some coins, bro. You gonna hand them over or what? And you're just sitting there while the game is asking you to give this random dude your life savings and you're like, should I? And if you do, it's not guaranteed to have a positive or even a negative outcome. Nearly every event has a good and bad outcome, or like an in-between one as well, continuously keeping you guessing at whether it's worth it or not. Which also means that you can't really like memorize the events and just kind of like know, oh yeah, this one I say yes to, this one I say no to, from like past experience. It's gonna be different every time. Needless to say, that fucking beggar took my goddamn saving. In terms of art design, this game doesn't do anything profound or groundbreaking, but it's by no means ugly. I quite enjoyed the pixel art, and as somebody that has attempted to dabble in it, I have great respect for the fellow who did this. It is not easy to portray detail with large ass pixels, and this game hardly ever misses its mark. You always know what you're looking at. Also, the crowds cheer when you commit murder in this game. I mean, like, come on. That's hilarious. Maybe I should take a long, hard look at my definition of comedy, because that thought process is more than concerning. Ignoring that warning sign of my psychopathy, let me quickly wrap up this segment on Mortal Glory. This is a fantastic game for $8. 10 if you want the Fresh Blood DLC along with it, which I did actually hop for. The Fresh Blood DLC adds new races, weapons, events, abilities, classes, and even an entirely new game mode. That's pretty damn good for $4. All in all, I found this game to be a delightful surprise, and I strongly recommend giving it a look if it sounds like your cup of tea. The only negative I can really think of is that it can get rather repetitive after a long while, but I definitely think the game manages to still be fun every time I boot it up. Just need some breaks with it every now and then, if that makes sense. I mean, to be fair, this entire series started because I needed a break from XCOM 2, so that's bound to happen in any video game. I suppose I'm just trying to say that this game is low on content when compared to XCOM or something like it, because of course it is. But what it does do, it does very well. So if you like gladiatorial combat, which I know you do, don't try to hide it. This game will keep you happily entertained. And I'm all for supporting indie developers. I know that shit is real difficult. Anyhow, let's move on to the next game on this list. Low Magic Age. This game feels like a dungeon master happened to also be a programmer, and it's a fantastic combo. The systems of D&D that have been developed for decades are all here and imagined well. It all just clicks together perfectly. As simple as this game looks, it has deep customization of your party, massive amounts of abilities, and a wide variety of classes and subclasses to choose from. Hell, I found myself sinking literal hours into its normal gladiatorial game mode, which is completely outside of its pretty damn good story mode. It is important to note that the game is in early access, by the way, and I typically avoid putting early access titles on this list, but I found this game to be feature complete enough that it didn't bother me too much to add it, and I wanted to give it a highlight in one of these videos. It is absolutely no shock that this game has over 2.5 thousand reviews, leading to a very positive review score on Steam, which for a small indie title is no small feat. It does what it does perfectly, and without apology. First, let's talk about the story mode, as that is the main drive of the game. This mode is reminiscent of the setup of Battle Brothers' menus and UI, but more akin to the likes of Baldur's Gate or the Pathfinder games in terms of linear plot. The plot itself I won't spoil, but I found it to be interesting enough. It definitely felt like I was sitting at a table with a DM who was leading me through this epic tale, and they had this story they really wanted to tell me. But while this is more linear than, let's say, Battle Brothers, it allows for some serious freedom. Hell, if you wanted, you could just travel in a straight line across the country, assuming you had the right amount of supplies and you could fight off whatever creatures roam the countryside. Although I do have to say that this game requires you to be willing to read. There is no voice acting, which shouldn't entirely be a surprise, but it can be a turnoff for some people, I know, so do keep that in mind. This is definitely an old school CRPG at its heart, and it has no qualms about it. If this is something you like, you'll like this game. Now, outside of the main story mode, you can also play the arena mode if you so desire, which ended up becoming my favorite part of the game. While it is quite literally just grinding, the joy of building a squad of gladiators and finding synergies was just so fucking fun, dude. My squad consisted of my fighter named Butcher the Blood Sipper, a cleric named Chris the Golden Boy, our ranger that shot like a stormtrooper named Yalandra the Shot Misser. Yeah, a bit on the nose, I know, but I was mad at her when I did that, okay? A sorcerer named Lilinia the Toad Tamer. Do not ask. A rogue named Cora the Stabby Stabber, and our lovely monk named Amikir the Penis Squasher. That last name just might be my magnum opus. With this squad, we currently hold an undefeated title, but the game is starting to get really difficult and we keep pulling some close victories, so fingers crossed we keep it up. With the arena mode, it's relatively similar to Mortal Glory in terms of the constant progression of your warriors. You earn money and then you spend that money on loot. The difference is that Mortal Glory has a lot of RNG related events and such in between each match, whereas Low Magic Age has your characters having the added progression of constant new abilities or passives depending on their class on each level up. You feel like you are constantly getting stronger, and there's a lot of room to synergize these classes and their abilities more and more as time goes on. Truthfully, if you play lots of D&D, you will enjoy this more than a casual player, but I still think learning all these abilities through new eyes would probably still be a wonderful experience, but I wouldn't really know because I am a D&D nerd. Lastly, you will find that this game has Steam Workshop compatibility, which lends to a ton of replayability with mods, although there's a lot of anime waifu in there. It's a terrifying place. Most of the mods at the moment are just more faces and unit models, but I imagine some bigger mods will come at some point. I would love to see some tools implemented in the far future that allow people to create their own campaigns and such. That would be amazing. All in all, Low Magic Age is a fantastic Dungeons & Dragons inspired old school CRPG. It does what it does fantastically, and while it doesn't reinvent the wheel, it manages to be a great time if you're just looking for some classic D&D games to sink your teeth into. Not to mention it's currently on sale for $6 until November 22nd. Even for its normal list price of around $15, I find it to be more than worth it. Maybe I'm just trying to justify that I bought this right before it went on sale. I don't want to worry about that right now. Anyhow, thank you so very much for watching. I love you and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, maybe send an Eldritch Blast into that like button. And if you want more content like this, thunder wave that subscribe button. But before I wish you farewell, I want to quickly apologize for the lack of uploading. With all the holidays and such around, my editors haven't been around to help me, and I myself have been quite busy. So I hope you'll find it in your heart to forgive me. But most importantly, have a goddamn wonderful day, and don't die. Bitch.